Good afternoon and welcome. We're here for a town hall for the 2022 annual budget for Mojave County. Thank you for taking time to join us. The way this is going to work out is we're going to have a few presentations for you and then turn it to comments, questions. You will hear from both supervisors. This is a joint town hall for supervisor for District 1 and District 4. And our intent is to focus on the budget. And so if you have other questions, we'll do our best to accommodate them, but the focus is the budget. And I'd like to introduce our supervisors and our Finance Services Director, and then we'll get going with the presentation. So with that, we have with us District 1 Supervisor Travis Linkenfelter, as they're behind me, and our District 4 Supervisor Gene Bishop, right there, and also Coral Lloyd, who is our Mojave County Finance Director, and she's right near center. Supervisor Gene Bishop will kick us off with a couple of comments, and then I'm going to share a few thoughts and comments with you. Coral will walk us through a presentation that is only about a handful of slides. And then Supervisor Linkenfelter will conclude the meeting, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments. And we truly are, and you will hear both supervisors say the same thing. We're here to just present some information to you, but we're interested in your thoughts and input. We want your feedback. So with that said, Supervisor Bishop, would you please kick us off?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so pleased and happy that you joined us tonight, and I wanted to put the budget book out here for you to see how much work our finance department has done to prepare for this town hall and for our preliminary budget, our tentative budget, and our final budget, which will be in August. So we've been having meetings and hearings and meeting with department heads and elected officials since I think February is when we kicked off the process. And then when we approve the final budget in August, finance will start working on the next year's budget. So it's a very lengthy process. And every year they bring us this huge budget book and expect us to read it page by page, and thankfully, they don't give us a test or make us memorize it, but we're here tonight to kind of explain how the county is funded and explain where your tax dollars go, because I'm finding out and speaking to constituents, people really don't understand that their property taxes don't come to the county. We get approximately 17% of the overall property tax bill that you pay annually. So we're going to, with the help of finance, kind of show you some charts and graphs and kind of outline where your money is going when you pay your property taxes. And then we're going to explain a proposal to bring in 1/4 penny sales tax, which would then reduce your property taxes a little bit every year for the next 4 years. So I'll turn this back over to our county manager and get this show on the road. But once again, thank you so much for attending tonight. And if anybody wants to read my budget book, I would be glad to share it with you.
I promise you we are not going to go through that budget book that Supervisor Bishop just showed you. We're only going to do a handful of slides that will summarize it. as I said, this is a joint town hall for District 1 and District 4. And I guess the fun fact of the night would be if you combine District 1 and 4, they're more than 3/4 of Mojave County. So large districts and very important ones along with the other three. So sometimes these town halls can be really valuable, and we want to make sure this one is valuable as well for you. We sometimes communicate when there is a problem. I'm happy to start my comments by saying Mojave County fiscal health is good. We scheduled this town hall not to present a problem, but to present a vision forward. And I also want to say this is only a proposal. So everything we share with you tonight and we discuss is a proposal for a budget that the board will consider next Monday on the 21st. The board will adopt a tentative budget. They will adopt a final budget in August. So, I think to piggyback off of Supervisor Bishop's comments and to share with you something I hope you already know, and that is the county provides really a wide variety of mandated services. Examples would be the courts, the legal services, prosecution, defense, so on, law enforcement, jail. Counties must and are mandated to have those. And, cost, those services have costs associated with them, and that cost usually grows with population growth, and we are growing as a county. It's probably important to note also that I believe, based on what I have seen and the numbers that I've seen in working with our finance department, that the Board of Supervisors has managed and governed, managed within the means available and governed really efficiently and soundly, and that is why the county fiscal health is good. So currently, I guess I should back up for a moment and say those services, those mandated services, really require flexibility in order for the board to efficiently and effectively govern. Some of those costs go up because of the way the mandates are, and the board and staff really do not have a whole lot of control over some of those services. If the crime rate goes up and law enforcement have to respond and the courts have to respond, then they do respond, they do what they need to do. And the county, along with some shared state revenues, will cover them. So currently, the revenue sources for services in the county are two separate sources. One is property taxes, which we all pay, and I call that a tax with local control. The board has a say, and they do annually adopt a budget that locks in the primary property tax rate. So there is local control. And then there's the state shared taxes and grants, which we have no control over. We just use what is shared with us and provided. So looking ahead and recognizing the need for that flexibility, we have put a budget together for the board to consider that represents a balanced approach. It is a 4-year plan with what I'd like to call a 3-legged stool. It would have the property tax, which we currently have, at a lower rate, and you will hear more about it. It would have a 1/4-cent sales tax that we currently do not have. We did have in Mojave County for 20 years, but it's sunset. And you will see when we had it, what it generated in the way of revenue, and what the county, what the Board of Supervisors allocated those for. And in fact, this very building where we're meeting is the result of those funds. And then obviously the third leg would be the one that we currently have, which is the state share taxes and grants, which we have no control over. The idea is to provide flexibility. Economic cycles go up and they come down and they go up, and to ensure that there is opportunities for the board to have that local control and to govern efficiently and effectively. And if you want to think of it, those two, the property tax and sales tax, where the board does have control, they can think of it as dials. They can dial them to adjust minimally, and that property tax is borne by us, those of us that own property and live here. Sales tax is paid by visitors and tourists and others that go through our county or come visit our county. And you will hear more about that from Coral. So again, this vision is really for a balanced approach that would be that is spread over 4 years, where we take the property tax and lower it by 36 cents. Coral is going to walk you through the details, and then introduce the sales tax of 1/4 cent. Between the two of them, the board will have the stable, sustainable revenue stream to govern with. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask Coral to come up, walk us through this presentation. It's not very long, I promise you. It's informative, and then we'll give chance to our supervisor from District 1, Travis Linkenfelter, will share some thoughts and comments with us and conclude before we get into questions and answers. So thanks again for being here, and here's Coral.
Making sure that that's going to work so I can point out some things as we move along. Again, thank you for being here. My name is Coral Lloyd. I'm the Finance Director, and appreciate all the time and energy for you to be here and your attention to Mojave County. In following up with Supervisor Bishop and Manager Elter's comments about the distribution of the property tax that you currently pay, there's often a lot of misunderstanding about the tax that you actually pay to the county treasurer is divvied up amongst a lot of different districts. In the example, if you live in both District 1 and District 4, if you're not inside the city limits, then generally you're going to be within a fire district, or if you're not inside the city limits and you're not inside a fire district, then school district taxes are usually a little bit higher. So in order to try to accommodate both of that, well, I should say more than both, but both districts and the possibilities that could happen, we actually evaluated some tax bills in both district areas, and the ones that were randomly selected did have fire district affiliation, whether that was with NACFED or Golden Valley or any of them actually in our area. For that, we had the Littlefield area was covered, the Dolan Springs area was covered, so we looked at quite a few. So I hope that you can see some of this information, but basically in using the Northern Arizona Fire District, that a tax bill for residential property amounted to about 28% of your tax bill going to the fire district. There's also a fire district assistance tax that all of us pay, including residents inside cities that have municipal fire departments. That tax is then divvied up to the fire districts, not municipal fire departments, but tax districts, and none of that goes to the county. The next large area of your tax bill is related to education. So in this case, I included KUSD. That could be another school district, depending on where you live. There's also a school equalization tax. Then the WAVE, the Western Arizona Vocational Education Program, levies a very small tax. And then the Mojave Community College. So the remaining amount, again, as previously mentioned, for Mojave County, the general primary property tax is about 17% of what you pay in property taxes. And then the county has the flood control district that amounts to about 4% of a tax bill. And I think it's important to note that while the county receives the tax directly as a revenue, the county then goes through a formula and splits the funding for flood control district revenue with Lake Havasu City, Bullhead City, Kingman, and Colorado City. So it's not all retained by Mojave County. And then, of course, we're all familiar with the library, and I don't know if you're familiar with the TV district, but the county levies about 6 cents for the TV district. In contrast to that, if you're living in the Kingman area, if you shop inside the city limits of Kingman, then you're paying right now a state of Arizona sales tax rate of 5.6%, of which 5% goes into the pot for the state of Arizona. Some of that is shared with cities and counties. And then 0.6% of that goes to education. Then Kingman is currently at a rate of 2.5% for a total of 8.1%. The tax rate that Mojave County used to have was at 0.25%, which is actually 1/4 penny. That expired in December of 2019. So it hasn't been a great deal of time, it's 18 months out that tax was in place. It was in place to provide funding for capital projects for 20 years. And the term was 20 years. There had been a discussion amongst the board on whether or not to extend it, to keep it, but the promise had been 20 years, and so at the conclusion of the 20-year term, that expired. The proposal that we're providing to the board and presenting to you, and happy to take questions on, is to reintroduce the same tax rate as what was already in place. So related to that 1/4 sales tax over the 20-year period that it was in place, the county actually received about $123 million in sales tax revenue, which to me is astonishing. I mean, that is a lot of money. I know it was over a 20-year period, but it averages out to about $7 to $8 million a year. So with that funding that was in place, the Board of Supervisors had committed that 100% of it would be to go toward capital projects, facilities, and things that were capital in nature of need. And when you look at the information on the slide, you can see that out of the $123 million generated, the jail, identified as the Adult Detention Center for its formal name, but otherwise known to all of us as the jail, that project was $63 million. So it was almost half, or about half, of the entire amount that was received was just for that facility. I do have a note on here that there were some additional funds that were brought forward to provide other resources for some of these facilities. For example, recently with the Law and Justice Center that was just completed, it was about $25 million in total, $24 million of which came from this pot of funding that had been saved and reserved. And then the courts also kicked in some of their fee funds for that facility. Sam already talked to you a little bit about this structure, and just to solidify, because a picture is always worth 1,000 words, the chart here on the right, then you can see that we're just requesting and recommending to reinsert one stool of one piece of the pie back into the overall funding structure and mechanism that the county uses to operate and to provide infrastructure to its citizens. I don't think that there's anything else that we have on here that was not already touched upon, so I'll go ahead and move along here with the next slide. Again, the proposal is to implement this sales tax and have that sales tax generate the same type of funding in order to provide the remaining amount of monies that we need to finish some of these capital projects, in which case some of these projects that are listed here were on the list 20 years ago. And you can see how the monies were spent on the prior slide. It was not quite enough to achieve all of these facilities. One of the facilities that we have listed here first is what we're calling right now the Legal Services Center, for lack of other term. That is not a facility to house all the attorneys that work in their independent businesses throughout the communities, but rather it is a facility to replace the many scattered facilities that are currently housed: the county attorney's office, the public defender, legal defender, our legal advocate, our indigent defense, and our victims witness and victims' rights programs are all scattered in a lot of different facilities, and many of them are aged. They're expensive to maintain, of which we're all paying for that. I mean, you as citizens are paying for that as well. One of the facilities, and now I forget which one it was, either the legal defender or the public defender, but they literally have some attorneys that were working out of closets. So they've taken off the closet doors, basically, and they've inserted a desk space for them to work in, and that's where they're working in. One of the facilities was the old church over here on 5th Street, I believe it is. And it's my understanding that has flooded a few times over the period of years. Clearly, the county's gone in with taxpayer dollars to try to take care of those issues and refurbish as much as possible. But those are continuing problems that we'll all continue to face unless we do something to replace those facilities or make improvements that would markedly change those outcomes. In coming up with a plan of what to do, the current year budget includes almost $2 million to actually refurbish the old Department of Economic Security building that is nearby where the Superior Court is in Kingman, just right down the street. And that would only provide a few extra 1,000 square feet of space. It's a very old facility. Was going to be $2 million alone just for that one facility and did not address any of the other areas. The facility that we're talking about with the $9 million is, I think, twice the size. So it would certainly provide room for the attorney divisions to grow if needed, if the county population continues to grow, and that needs to be addressed through legal services. Then there would be an opportunity to house the staff to take care of those issues. And put them in one facility right next to the court where it would be very handy and close by and address the maintenance issues that we're currently having. Some of the buildings that these folks would then move out of and be relocated to a newer facility, some of them could just be demolished. They're in very poor condition, and we could use that as parking space for the downtown area and for the courts. And there are a few that are in better shape that we may actually be able to sell or reuse in other areas. So the other items that are on this list include sheriff substations. County currently has a substation in Bullhead and Lake Havasu City. And I would guess that all of you that are here have driven by the one, at least in Lake Havasu City, and are familiar with where it's at, what it looks like, although probably not on the inside. They also have a very small facility in the Beaver Dam, so North Canyon area of Mojave County, and the sheriff is requesting to reconstruct the two facilities in Bullhead and Havasu, refurbish the one in Beaver Dam, is my understanding. And then there's also been a discussion on whether or not we could consolidate the substation between the Mojave Valley area and Lake Havasu area to perhaps further reduce costs. So those are also on the plan, and those facilities were on the plan 20 years ago. We have $5 million dedicated to a morgue or the or the medical examiner facility. The facility that the medical examiner currently works at is in Lake Havasu City. And again, I have not seen the facility, but it's my understanding that that is kind of a Quonset hut type of structure. We do not own that facility, and we own some of the equipment, and the medical examiner owns some of the equipment, and there's a lot of inefficiencies related to that. Included in the budget and currently out for procurement is a contract related to medical examiner services, but again, as Manager Elters mentioned, that is one of the services that the county is required to provide, whether that's outsourced or whether that's provided in-house, but that would be what that money would be dedicated for. And then the last one there, $10.5 million in unfunded liabilities, is essentially the public safety pension retirement system for the sheriff's office. So the county currently has an unfunded liability of about $26.5 million. That unfunded liability moves and changes from year to year, and it's measured like on June 30 each year. So it's whatever the market was on June 30 is the number that's used to calculate the report. And so it's been the county's policy, and it continues to be our recommendation, that Mojave County bring funding for that system up somewhere between 80 and 100%. And there are reasons not to get to 100%. And there are certainly financial reasons not to be below 80% because of the additional cost to the taxpayers. All of these projects and the unfunded liability need to be addressed. There's a large piece of this is just whichever pocket this money will come from, but it's all funded basically from taxpayers and property owners right here in Mojave County. The proposal, again, would be to implement the sales tax, use it for these projects, as well as to immediately begin to pay down the unfunded portions of the unfunded liability, and reduce the property tax over the next 4 years by the same value that the sales tax would be coming up. So the sales tax, again, is worth about $8 million. The drop in the 36 cents, this is not a coincidence that we're proposing to drop the property tax by 36 cents. That's what the value of the $8 million is worth in today's current property tax rate. So that would drop that over the period of years. So in fiscal year 22, we're proposing to drop that to $1.82, and then the next year by another 7 or 8 cents, and so on, down to $1.54 by the time that we get to year 4. Now, with that said, there could be some things that occur that change the landscape of that, where, again, as mentioned, this would allow the board to adjust the dial. It may be 8 cents next year, 5 cents the following year because of an event that's occurred, and then 9 cents the following year, and 12 cents the final year, whatever we need to do to add up to the 36 cents as proposed. The message then is how to do that and what impact that has on your citizens. And I'll just be very forward with you, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds because this is really exciting stuff for me, but I know it's not for all of you. But the $1.82 that is proposed for next year, initially, when we were going through the analysis of how we were going to get the budget balance for this coming year, because of the timing of the sales tax, the timing of the final budget adoption, the requirements for the Department of Revenue to implement a sales tax, was if the board approved a sales tax resolution, the earliest that could become effective is November 1st. So if that were in place November 1st, by then your taxes have already been levied for property tax, and you're beginning to pay that in October and into November. So we knew that we were going to have, a partial year of property tax, a partial year of sales tax, and that we'd probably only collect about $5 to $5.5 million in sales tax the first year. And we're probably pretty close with that estimate because we had a sales tax. So we know about what it generates, or at least what it did through 2019. But we got the T&T notice from the Department of Revenue, and there's a special committee that's assigned for property tax oversight. And the number that we got back, because of the very strong growth in the county, the number that we received back was that our T&T rate, our truth in taxation rate for next year, is going to drop to $1.82. So right out the gate, kind of had to adjust the dial immediately and say, well, in order to adhere to the values that the Board of Supervisors have represented to us, we have to hit the target of the T&T rate, that truth in taxation rate. So we're proposing, modify the proposal, we'll go down the 8 cents to come to the T&T, and go from there and figure this out and work with the Board of Supervisors. Obviously, they have to vote on this at one point in time, as well as take input from the constituents. So in looking at the impact of what this truly means to each of us, what does a property tax reduction, of 36 cents really amount to per year? So we did a couple of examples and tried to go reasonable, but reasonably high, if you will, in some areas, so that it kind of represented a cross-section of the county in all of our tax districts. By statute, when you're going to advertise taxes, or when you end up with seeing the county's truth in taxation notice or any other tax district's truth in taxation notice, we're required to advertise at $100,000 property value, at a $100,000 home. However, right now in today's market, most of the homes are in excess of $100,000. So we decided that we would go with a higher number. So we picked $200,000 to start with. And residential homes the assessment ratio on a residential home is 10%. So your net assessed value that you'd be taxed on is $20,000. At $1.90, you're paying to the county, Mojave County General Fund, $380 a year. If that dropped to $1.54 by year 4, at the same rate, a $200,000 home would be $308 in tax to the county. So a cost reduction of $72 a year. Doesn't seem like a lot, like not a huge decrease. And so I did some work to try to value that across the aisle, if you will, to what is a sales tax? How much do you spend in sales tax to just direct the county, or what did you through 2019? Before we get there, then you can see that at a $350,000 home, then the amount is basically doubled, 1.5 times that amount. And then switching to a business, so the larger impact really is to business owners. So we picked a business that has a value of about $2 million. Their tax ratio is currently 18%. It used to be 25%, so it's come down over the period of years. It's at 18, and there is a bill they're discussing in the state budget that may come down next year to 17.5, and the subsequent year to 17. We really don't know yet. That will depend on what the state legislative decision is. But at that ratio, at 18%, at $1.90, then a business would be paying almost $7,000 a year in property tax to the county. A reduction of just 36 cents would be a savings to the business of about $1,300, and then a larger savings, of course, to the example that we have for a $5 million business, and so on. A smaller business, a lesser impact; a larger business, a greater impact. So in regard to sales tax, the depiction that we put together over the period of years have done quite a bit of research on really who pays sales tax. Even property tax is not entirely local people because we have out-of-state property owners, but a large bulk are property owners right here in Mojave County. For local residents, for sales tax, and I'll walk you through how I arrived at that. So a piece that I will not walk you through, but I have looked at the surveys that have been completed for Grand Canyon West, Lake Havasu City, Bullhead City, Skywalk specifically. There have been some Kingman studies that have been performed by some universities. We've looked at all of those and really kind of dug into data that is available on the Arizona Office of Tourism site and met with some of their staff there to interpret this data. And I'll walk you through, I'm going to call just a layman's term, something that I think that we can understand, that I could understand in getting there, not bore you with a lot of statistics, but just kind of lay it out that I think we could reasonably safely say that probably 50% of the sales tax revenue is from purchases made within our taxable areas by people that live here, by our local residents. The remaining amount must come from somewhere else, and you'll see why after we go through that. But it's not just tourism and visitors, but it's also those one-time purchases when you buy a new car, even if it's, I'm trading in my car that I currently have for a used car, you're still paying a portion of sales tax if you buy it from a dealer. So it is netting out all that information combined with business needs, so business owners that have a business in our municipalities that procure items within the municipalities basically that provide the balance of the sales tax. So in getting to that, and I don't mind your feedback on this either if you think I'm completely out of touch with reality here, but I try to go high so that somebody could kind of put in their mind what their own monthly income or annual income is, and then determine whether or not their monthly household budget is higher or lower than this. But to start at the top then, I said, well, if you bought 4 weeks worth of groceries at $150 a week, it's $600 a month that you spend out of your income for groceries. When you go to the grocery store, occasionally you buy taxable items, so laundry soap or laundry detergent, shampoo, things like that that are actually taxable. So I estimated that there are other places to purchase that, including the internet. So I'm going to say that about $100 of your grocery bill are actually for taxable items. And then I put in an amount about $300 for utilities on a monthly basis. And of the utilities, most of it is taxable, subject to sales tax. But water is not subject to sales tax. So I backed out a portion of the water and was left with about $250 in taxable utilities. I included cell phone, $150 a month, TV and internet service, the same. Restaurant and bars, assuming that people are spending $300 a month to go out to eat each month. Fuel for your cars, I put $400. That might be higher or lower than what you and your family spend, but I wanted to make it reasonably in the realm of what is paid. And I put 0 next to that for taxable. Now, it is subject to tax, but it's the highway user revenue tax. It's not a city tax. It's not the county's general sales tax. So we don't have any that you're paying for fuel is actually coming back to the general fund. I included about $1,200 as a mortgage or rent payment because I think that some of that has really gone up to that at this point in time. It might be more, it might be less, but at least it's an area that you can focus in on. The sales tax is paid initially on like a home that you purchase the first time that it is purchased. Basically the contractor assesses that in the value of the home and then remits that from the homeowner back to the state of Arizona, and then it circulates back to the district for where it was purchased. For car payments, I put in about $700, and again, I put 0 sales tax on the car payment because you're essentially paying the tax when you buy the car. If you lease a car, that's a little different. You're paying the tax on a monthly basis. But I assume that for most people, they're probably purchasing the cars over a period of time. And then I put in for credit cards and then other purchases about $1,000 a month, of which about $250 out of $500 may be subject to tax. And that might be more than that, it might be less than that. It kind of depends. So not all things are subject to sales tax. For example, if you get a haircut, you're spending the money, but it's not subject to tax, not subject to sales tax because it's a service. If you get your car repaired at an automotive shop, you pay sales tax on the parts, but not on the service. So there's some money in there also for the medical, but if you add all of that up at the end of the month and you spent $5,000, something like this in this budget, which I think is very high for a lot of people. But if you had a budget similar to this, that would require a net income of disposable income of $60,000 a year, the job that you'd have to spend $60,000 a year. Again, I don't think a lot of people have a household income equal to that high, but if they did, it would be about $15,000 a year in taxable items, or the sales tax that would be generated from. And if it were if your income were lower, and you had less to spend, it still might be about $15,000, depending on some of the other areas that you're not paying sales tax. It depends on, how expensive the car is when you purchased it, or the amount of gas that you get and things like that. But in shifting that over then, if you spent $15,000 in taxable sales, I went over to this chart, and the rate was 0.25% or 1/4 of 1 cent, the amount on an annual basis would be $37.50, as compared to the $72 in property tax. And then if you divided that by 12 months, it's $3.13 a month that you would pay to the county for county services. How does that add up to $8 million? Well, there's about 84,000 homes or families in Mojave County based upon 2.3 persons per population into the household and things like that. That would only generate about $3.5 to $4 million of the sales tax, possibly less. And so knowing that and doing the math behind that, that's therefore the assertion that it could be 50%, could be more, could be less, but somewhere in that range that is paid by tourism, visitors, one-time purchases, or businesses. And the impact to the tax rate, if you will, again, just to solidify this, that it would just be going back to what we had up through 2019, which was 8.35%. And so the final slide that I have to share is really just a comparison of the tax rates in Mojave County compared to the rest of the state of Arizona. And they're only on the left side of this screen showing this combined property and excise tax rate. There are only 3 counties with lower combined tax rates than Mojave County: Apache, Navajo, and Greenlee. And those are all considerably smaller counties and have a totally different setting, if you will. The slide that I have before you, I don't know if you can see it very well, I don't think so, but each color then represents a different tax district that's affiliated just with county services. So for Mojave County, we have, again, the primary flood control library and the TV district. But you can see by the color variety that a lot of the other counties have a lot of other districts paid for through a tax venue, whether that was they have a jail property tax or a jail excise tax, or they have a public health district paid for either by property tax or sales tax. For Mojave County, ours is paid for out of the primary property tax rate. I put on a slide, and I do not want to forget to add as well, this solidifies what Manager Elters mentioned during his comments. Mojave County is 50 cents below the maximum property tax rate. To me, that's remarkable. And the tax rate could be as high right now as about $2.40, and we're at $1.90. I think that attests to the commitment that the Board of Supervisors have to the citizens and businesses within the county, their commitment to trying to do the most and stretch every dollar that they can to get the best service that they can for the amount of money that taxpayers here are willing to or are able to provide. And it provides a great cushion, if you will, for contingencies that could occur. So there is another unfunded liability that we call it that's pending right now before the county and would have a great impact on other counties in the state. But there's a tax settlement issue that's currently ongoing, and if that came to a conclusion and Mojave County did not prevail on that tax question, we would have to refund back to the taxpayers, the business itself, millions of dollars. It would just be huge. So by the board really paying attention to not spending everything that they could and managing the budget with a great deal of cushion in there, then they do have an opportunity, if need be, to respond to some of the litigations and other impacts utilizing those resources that could be available. Mojave County is also the only county without a sales tax. Maricopa and Pima County do not have a general sales tax either, but they do have tax district taxes for either the jail or public health or both, and they have regional transportation taxes, and Sam can speak a lot more to that than I can. But they do have a variety of taxes. On the other side of the slide, Mojave County is down near the bottom again, but on the lower half of that, Maricopa, the primary property tax for Maricopa is less than Mojave County's. And even if we lowered it by 36 cents, Maricopa County's primary tax rate would still be below Mojave County's. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is in a metropolitan area, they have a lot more assessed value, a lot more diverse businesses. They have a tax base that is significantly larger than what we have in all of the rural counties. And then you can see on the slide that's the same 3 counties that are below Mojave County, the small counties, Navajo, Greenlee, and Apache, and then Coconino. So Coconino, just to point out, how in the world did Coconino only have a 53-cent tax rate. They are a medium county, so they're in our comparator size. But they also have, as you can see on the slide on the other side, for Coconino, let me find them. They're 2-3 up from their tax rate. Am I hitting them? They're right there in the middle. Their tax rate combined is greater than Mojave County's, and they do have the other districts for the sales. They have transportation tax, and they also share a transportation tax with the city of Flagstaff. They have jail district, public health district, and then the sales tax. And they have the sales tax levied at 0.5 cent. So Mojave County has also been careful. The Board of Supervisors have been careful. The statutes allow counties to levy for their general purpose sales tax, basically 10% of the state's sales tax rate. Mojave County, even during that 20-year period, only levied half of that. So that also is fairly unique, that the Board of Supervisors here has taken a lower cut of what was available. And I think that attests to their commitment and values that they've expressed and continue to express to the constituents. So with that, I hope I've hit most of the main points, and that I haven't forgotten too much. One area that we've talked about a little bit was in some other meetings was assessed values. And if there's a 36-cent tax rate reduction, does that mean your taxes are going to go down? And the answer to that is a little bit complicated, but the easier answer is no. That is not really what that means. If your assessed value goes up 5% and your tax rate goes down, then we're trying to hit it so that that's right, that it would just be leveled out. So I don't want to be, I want to be just really open and honest and transparent about that if you have a $100,000 house right now, next year, that's going to be a $105,000 house. And the subsequent year, whatever the math is on top of that. So that's how it works. We would have to come below that amount to even that out. So we don't actually get down to a lower property tax revenue stream until you're out in year 4, basically, where it's less. The amount that would be received by the county would be actually less than what we would receive in this fiscal year. And then the other item with assessed values is that there were some legislative changes driving how the tax is calculated between the full cash values and the limited values. But the limited value that's used today and that's proposed for next year is still less than the value that was calculated in 2009. So we're still below where we were 12 years ago. So I think that we all lived through that. If you were here, or if you were anywhere, you saw that values decreased, and they did with the county as well, within the tax rolls through the assessor's office. So I will turn it back over to Sam and, of course, be available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Carl. Great job. I hope you found the information valuable and clear. I would like to have Supervisor Linkenfelter conclude our presentation and share his thoughts and perspective with you, and then we'll turn it into questions and answers. So without any further ado, Supervisor Linkenfelter.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. I know that there's about a million places you guys could be, and you guys are here with us, so I appreciate you guys coming out, taking time to understand the proposal that Coral has laid out. I appreciate that, because you didn't have to be here, so I appreciate that. I'm going to go a little off script here. I think it's worth repeating a few things from that proposal, right? You know, a lot of the people that I've spoken to in District 1, when I tell them that for every dollar of their combined tax rate that they pay, that 47% of that goes to education. You know, a lot of people don't know that. So I think the moral of the story is, if you care about that, you need to start going to the school board meetings. It's important to go to the school board meetings for not just that reason, but for a lot of other reasons too that we don't need to get into. But 28% is going to a fire district in District 1. If you live in District 1, 7% goes to a secondary district, and only 17% of every dollar really goes to Mojave County to pay for the wide array of county level services that we provide, or that the county provides as an organization. And they do a lot for that little amount. So, you know, for the sales tax portion, as Coral talked about, you know, about 50% of that is coming from our visitors, people that are traveling through, the tourists. You know, as we all know, if you've gone anywhere in Mojave County, we're really rich in natural amenities in this county. We've got lakes, we've got rivers, and we have people that swarm here from Southern California and other places that come to enjoy what we have here every day and what we call home. So we're going to be shifting more of the burden to them. Additionally, we would be taxing things like recreational marijuana, which we should be taxing. They need to pay their fair share. Online sales, things like that. And by doing that, we get to, you know, decrease the contribution of the people that actually live here over a 4-year period by about 19% for Mojave County's portion of that combined tax rate. So that's a good thing. My background is in economic development, you know, and another thing that has not been spoken about tonight, where I think that this sales tax portion and this property tax proposal over the next 4 years, decreasing it almost 19%, right, is for our businesses, our business base, right? Mojave County needs jobs. Mojave County needs businesses. Mojave County needs jobs. And I'm a firm believer in economic development, and I'm a firm believer in broadening our business base and our tax base and our valuation, right? Businesses will create jobs. You know, you heard Coral talk about we don't have a lot of $60,000 a year jobs here. Well, guess what? We need to work on that. We need to work hard. And if we can decrease the primary property tax rate to make Mojave County a more competitive location to do business, that's a good thing. That's something that I support. And I'm glad for that. You know, the more private businesses that Mojave County has, I'm a firm believer it makes Mojave County that much stronger. So that's something to support. Also, you know, when I first got in January and I heard that these substations for our public safety, our law enforcement, had been on the books for 20 years and we still haven't built them, that's something that's a priority to me. You know, I support law enforcement, and if it's been 20 years, then we need to get on it and we need to build these things for our law enforcement. That's something that we need to support. And then the medical examiner facility. I have a little bit different of a perspective. You know, back in 2004, for about almost 6 years, I was the county's procurement director, and the way that the county handles the medical examiner contract is they put out this request for proposals, and any of the providers that submit a proposal, they're required to provide the whole enchilada, the facility, you know, all of it. And that makes it kind of difficult to get providers to come in that are willing to provide the service. A lot of people that are capable and suitable to do that type of work, they just want to come in and they want to do the service. So I think we owe it to the citizens of Mojave County to have a professional facility for a medical examiner, and that is going to broaden the pool, I think, for providers. You know, we can provide that facility to them, and we'll have more providers, hopefully, that are able to use that facility and are willing to put a proposal in. So, you know, in closing, I think Mojave County is doing a pretty good job compared to all the other counties, as Coral has talked about. And I, again, want to thank all of you for taking the time to come out, for your attendance. I appreciate that. Looking forward to listening. That's really the most important part of this meeting for me. So thank you very much for coming.
Well, as you heard earlier and now from Supervisor Lingenfelter, it's time to listen to you. So we invite you to come up to the podium if you'd like, or we can bring a portable mic to you. Our supervisors planned this town hall and are here because they truly wanted to get feedback. This is a we understand it's an important decision. It's an important decision for them, and every decision our board makes has impacts. Those could be good impacts or not so good impacts, and so. But obviously, it's the good impacts that they do have in mind. So we truly appreciate any thoughts, feedbacks, comments that you have, and we'll be more than happy to walk the mic over to you or invite you to come up to the podium and share your thoughts and comments with us. Would you like to come up?
Okay, I've been on Facebook and I'm listening to all this stuff, and I see the people say that you saving property tax owners, the rich people in Mojave County. Not everybody that owns a house is rich. But what they're not understanding is if they're renting a place and the property tax goes up, the rent's going up because the property owner's going to put that over to the renter. I agree with the 1/4-cent sales tax because the property tax, if I'm understanding it correct, the assessment value of your house goes up every year. So you're not going to get that whole 36 cents each year because it's going to kind of wash it out. It's just not going to put us up higher. So the 1/4-cent sales tax to me makes sense because everybody pays based on what you buy. So you can control what you pay and how much you pay by the sales tax. And like you said, 50% of it's going to be paid by our tourists. My second question is, how do we control school tax? 47% of our tax bill goes to education. If they're going to teach this critical race and all that stuff, then we need to get involved and take that taxes back. Because I don't have a child in school, but I got grandkids, and I don't want to be taught that. So how do we do something about that 47% that goes to education and take our school control back to the people?
Sam, if I might answer that. I sat 4 years on the Mojave County Community College District Governing Board, and people need to realize that the community college has its own elected governing board. The school districts here, they have their own governing board. I think people need to really pay attention for a lot of different reasons, not just fiscal reasons, to the folks that are throwing their hat in the ring to run for the different levels and the different school boards in the county. It makes a difference. And I think that you don't see the representation that you do at maybe a city council meeting or a county board of supervisors meeting at those school district meetings that we probably should. You know, a lot of people that maybe their children are full-grown adults, they've moved on, they have their own careers, they have their own families, they think that, you know, they don't have a place at those meetings for whatever reason, but they do. There's a lot of reasons to go to those school board meetings. So I think becoming more involved, and if you want to go a step before that, you know, above that, you could even choose to run for a school board to make a difference. That's my opinion. They do. Yeah, Mojave Community College, they vote on their taxes. The district votes on their taxes. They all make those decisions for their rate. So it's incredibly important, if it matters to you, to show up and participate in those meetings. I mean, I'm telling you that from my own perspective, after sitting on the Community College District Governing Board for 4 years, if you had 10 or 15 or 20 individuals that showed up at a meeting, that would make an impact.
Penny, I've also been involved with Mojave Community College. In fact, I graduated from MCC. But I also go to a lot of school board meetings, and Supervisor Lincoln-Felter is absolutely correct. When you go to the school board meetings, there's rarely anyone in attendance that's not affiliated with the school itself, and it's usually just the school board members. But they prepare a budget every year just like we do, and they vote on it just like we do, and then they send their rate over to the county, and we collect the taxes for them, and then we provide those taxes twice a year to the different districts, whether it's school district, fire department district, or a special district.
Evening. Thank you for hosting this evening. Timothy Reap to District 1. My first question, would this sales tax have a sunset like the previous one, or would it be permanent?
I have not heard of a sunset date. Carl?
So I'll take that one. We, staff, did not put a sunset on it, recognizing that the final decision is for the Board of Supervisors. When they take it up, they can leave it as is, or they can put a sunset on it, and it could be any year. We truly did not feel that we would be in position to tie their hand and put a sunset on it for them. So we left it open, but the board can do so when they take it up Monday or at the final budget stage.
So, Timothy, I can tell you that I would feel somewhat uncomfortable imposing a tax for another elected board. So in 2024, we could have a whole new board of supervisors. So I would look favorably on sunsetting this tax in 4 years, or the possibility of.
I mean, perfect example, the last one had a 20-year sunset. What would be wrong with that instead of just open-ending this? Because I personally support it, but we know you've got to convince all of your constituents to support it so you don't get too much grief. Maybe considering putting a sunset on this proposed reintroduction of the quarter-cent sales tax might go over a little better with your constituents.
We could absolutely do that, or we could do it for 4 years and then put a clause in there to revisit it at the end of that 4 years for the new board.
I'd like to also comment on that. You know, alongside what everybody else has said, in my mind, that there is almost a de facto sunset date, and that is our term limits, right? We all serve 4-year terms, and I would anticipate that in 4 years, when you have a new board of supervisors that's sworn in, that this issue would be revisited, because all of the goals that have been presented tonight in 4 years will have been satisfied. And then, if it was to continue, you'd have to come up with a whole new set, right?
I believe you just addressed my second one. Would there be anything in this proposal to prevent future boards, if, say, we did go more than a 4-year sunset on it, from being able to just willy-nilly raise it? Nope, quarter percent isn't working. Let's go to 3/4%. Those are things I'm asking you as a constituent to consider putting into your languages on these budget discussions and introducing this. On your priority list, such as Legal Services Center, yes, the Sheriff's Department definitely needs some new improved substations, especially that one in Havasu. That's almost embarrassing to have it right there on the edge of the highway, the way it looks just from the exterior. But, for example, the Legal Services Center, we all have got an idea of the cost that is being spent right now to maintain the PDO building, the LDO. The old DES building is now being used as a jury selection building until the remodel of the old Superior Annex is done, that currently I believe is $3 million over projected cost because of construction increases since the original budget for that plan was laid out. How are you going to prioritize where you spend the money first on those topics? The substations, the all-in-one PDO, LDO, county attorney, et cetera offices in one building, one center to serve the public, right next to the Superior Courthouse, the coroner's office. Where are you going to establish your priorities for when the funding has come in from the sales tax? You're going to spend it.
So I'll take a shot at that. Part of the budget proposal lays out those priorities. Clearly, you're informed and you have a good feel for those buildings and the issues associated with them. As you heard from Coral earlier, the public defender's office is in an older church. Ventilation has been a problem. In fact, we are faced with a need to upgrade the ventilation system, and that is like $250,000. So these are not cheap items. The legal defender's office building, not only it's small and working out of closets, but it has truly been flooded multiple times. So we have an old jail that is determined to be a hazard and needs to go. Our priority as laid out for our board is in the order that we showed them to you, that legal services, mandated legal services center. I like to use that term mandated because it's truly what it is. That would go first, and we see that happening over multiple years. We start with preliminary engineering, design, and then construction. And that would serve county attorney, the prosecution side of the family, legal defender, public defender, indigent services, and there will be others. We see this building as accommodating all of them and having room to grow. Second, as we are planning and constructing that, we see us programming the design for the sheriff substations, which would go next. And while we're doing that, it's safe to say that they will occur concurrently. So we will be designing in one while we're planning another, while we're constructing in a third one yet. We will live within our means. And then along the same time, we will be making payments on the PSPRS, as Coral showed you. So that is coming down as well. That is the plan. The budget in front of the board. Our intent is to follow that hierarchy and that process if the board is to adopt the budget that we have in front of them. I'm just going to stop here and.
I'd like to comment a little bit on that, Sam. And I appreciate all of the work that Manager Elters and his staff administration has done on this budget. As the District 1 supervisor, since this is the proposed budget, I have a little bit of my own priorities. Law enforcement to me is my top priority. One of the substations that the plan proposes to address is up in the Beaver Dam area in the Arizona Strip. I've seen this substation, and I think it's a horrible place to try to work. It's in awful condition, and I'm going to be pushing to see that goes pretty quick.
Personally, it's going to take a while to come up with the money for the legal services center or the build bid design. If we're going to put it in the old jail's location, that needs to go because it recently failed its fire inspection system that legally has to be maintained, I believe, and that's a six-figure repair bill when the roof's caving in on it, so that needs to be a priority to get that building gone. I'm assuming somewhere in that area is where the county would be looking at putting the new legal services center, get rid of the current victim services building, the LDO building, they're beyond service use, and either lease or sell out the DES building. And if the floor issues in the county attorney's office can be addressed, lease, sell it, and the current BDO building eventually. But that's this big of a project. Substations are this big, so balance. Okay, we can go ahead and go with the build design, or however process that works. I remember that whole discussion from when you were a councilman, while taking care of the lesser expensive substations to take care of our law enforcement officers that are there to take care of us citizens. Final question. No, I don't want your binder, Supervisor
Could I
Bishop.
chime in on your first question before you go on to the next one? I've worked in both of them, and it was years ago, and they were horrid back then. So I just can't imagine how much worse they are now, 20 years later. And then as a priority, the Board of Supervisors can change the order of what's recommended in the list of priorities.
And no, I don't want your binder, but is the proposed budget available online for citizen review?
Yes, this is this
Is
available
the
online?
budget available online? Yes.
All right, thank you.
Coral, where is that located on the county website?
So you can just go to the county website, click under the finance department, and then budget. And you do have to go through a couple of tabs of, picking the year, tentative budget, final budget, things like that, but it's fairly easy to get to. Thank you.
Good evening, Alice Van Stockham, District 1. My question is, with the reduction on the property tax, how is that going to further affect the infrastructure, like residential streets out in Valley Vista? We've had the asphalt falling into our property for the last 10 years, and nothing's been done about it. So that's my question.
So,
That's a good question for you, Sam.
yes,
You're the
Supervisor,
expert.
thank you. I think I can handle that. Transportation and roads is my background. So, at the present time, and just to take you back one step further, you heard when Coral was given the presentation, she said Maricopa County has a transportation tax that is part of their overall tax package. And they use it for the regional freeway system down there. If you travel to the valley, the 101, 202, 303, and so on. We don't have that. But there is a fuel tax, and is known as the Highway User Revenue Fund. We call it HERF. That is paid at the pump. So when we buy gasoline, and it's not an added, it's not like you buy $40 worth of gasoline and you pay so much more for tax. It's built into that price, and it's for both gas for vehicles and diesel. So it's built into the price. 18 cents out of every gallon that you buy, no matter what you pay for the gas, whether it's going up or coming down or staying level, goes to the state Highway User Revenue Fund, and 18.5 cents goes to the federal government. The federal has a formula. They collect those dollars and share them back. They keep some for administrative, and then they share them back with the states. We get some, and then the state does the same. So those dollars are what maintains our roadway network. It's got a firewall. Mojave County Board of Supervisors does not try to spend it on anything else, but they truly could not, even if they want. They're firewalled for roadway purposes. Now, if the board wanted to, they could take money from the general fund and put it into HERF for additional roadway maintenance. That practice has not been the case here in Mojave County, and it really has not been the case practically in any other county. But it's the HERF dollars that are used for road maintenance, and those are what the Department of Public Works, they have a program annually where they assess the conditions of the road surface, and they come out and do either preventative maintenance, whether it be in the chip seal or some of the coat seals that they do, or do overlays or whatever the case may be. So that is a function of the Public Works Department, that is the maintenance of the roadway system. I don't know if I answered your question, but let me just say the property tax that you're here and you're discussing with us tonight is not used. None of it goes to the roadway maintenance. So lowering the property tax to provide some relief to the property owners and allow the sales tax to make up for, that relief has no impact on the conditions of the roadway. Either you supervisors would like to add? Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Diana Dunsmore, and I'm here from Chloride, which puts me in District 4. I just moved here in December from Ohio, and I've been spying on you guys for about a year now because this is a whole different form of government from what I'm used to. I've been very impressed. I'm impressed with my supervisor of District 4. I'm impressed with the board. This 0.25% tax seems like way overdue and very, very reasonable. And I hope that the public here is able to appreciate that obviously you have done a lot with a little, and this is necessary now. All the figures in the slides that you put together, is it Coral? I'm sorry, I came in late, so I missed that introduction. Wonderful, just wonderful. So I'm here as a student, and I love what you're doing, and I really, really hope that you are able to put this kind of information to everybody to point that they can understand that this is only logical, and to be at the bottom of all the counties in all these areas, that should be appreciated. And even if it bumps you up, you're still at the bottom, and that's a good deal. So good luck with your everything. I'm not registered to vote yet, so I can't vote for anybody, but I will vote for Mrs. Bishop when I get registered to vote because I think she does a great job. I've been impressed by all of you.
Thank you very much. And one thing that we forgot to mention during our presentation was the fact that if this 0.25% sales tax is to go forward, it has to be approved unanimously by the Board of Supervisors. So all 5 of us have to vote yes in order to make it proceed forward. So I hope if you do support the 0.25% sales tax that maybe you reach out to all 5 supervisors and let them know your concerns or your feelings or your support. But I just think it's great that Coral has put this presentation together to where we can all understand it, even if you're not a financial whiz. With the charts and the pictures and everything, it makes it very, very easy to understand. So I just want to thank all of our county residents and the business owners that provide the jobs and the economic opportunities, and Mojave County staff, especially finance and county manager Elchers, that have worked so hard to maintain and strengthen the quality of life here in Mojave County and make it home to not only us that have lived here all of our lives, but for people like this young lady that just came here and appreciate our rural way of life and our no-nonsense approach to county government. So thank you all for coming tonight. I'm very pleased, and this will be on YouTube. It's being recorded, and it's live streaming right now. So
This is probably going to be a controversial issue.
good. I was waiting for that one.
I had to wait. COVID money.
Yes.
With all the money that the county got and the city got from COVID, and then we're still asking people to pay an extra 0.25% taxes, that's going to be a big issue to get this 0.25% passed, because that's a big issue that I'm hearing. With all these millions of dollars that came in from COVID, I don't know if people know where that money was spent, how it was spent, if it could ever be spent on any of this stuff. But now we just see you get all this money, and then you're coming and asking us to pay another 0.25% tax. I think that that's going to be an issue as far as to get this to pass.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The COVID monies that are coming in, when you get money from the federal government, there are strings attached, and there are restrictions on how you can spend the COVID money and the various grants and everything. So it has to, in order to spend that money, even though they sent it to us and we accepted it, we have to be able to justify that we have jumped through the hoops that they have listed as requirements to use this money. So maybe Supervisor Lincolnfelter can chime in on that more, and especially Coral Lloyd, because we're getting $41 million supposedly over the next couple of years, but can we really spend that money?
I'll offer just a few comments. And I think it's already been stated that you look at the CARES Act and you look at the American Rescue Plan Act, or whatever they're calling it, all those funds have to be tied to some sort of a COVID response, right? For instance, the housing relief money that before I was sworn in, I think the county accepted a $5 million pool for housing assistance. 800,000 of that had been expended, and there's still a little over $3 million available from the original pool. They tried to give us another $5 million. And this board said, I think that COVID's kind of in our rearview mirror, and we're going to deny that. We're not going to accept that additional $5 million because we don't want to be dependent upon the federal government. We don't want to have our businesses, have our landlords, have all these private sector people competing against the federal government. That's never the way it was supposed to be in America, in the United States. And I don't think that this board is going to stand for that any longer. I mean, I'm certainly not going to. I believe in the private sector and in people being able to determine for themselves what's best for their own lives and their own families, and that's what I'm going to support. Thankfully, the American Recovery Act, or the Rescue Plan, or whatever they're calling it again, I'm a really big advocate of infrastructure. And fortunately, one of the allowable expenses is water infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, broadband. These are areas where I believe that there's a huge need and demand in Mojave County, especially in District 1. When you look at economic development, when you look at the rate of automation, driverless vehicles, all these things, you need to have strong infrastructure. And we have a lot of land and a lot of dirt in Mojave County, but we don't have a lot of real estate where you can build a building. So, and it's hard to get a company to come here when you're, competing against Henderson and North Las Vegas and Casa Grande and Phoenix area and maybe South Jordan, Utah. And then they look at Mojave County and, Rand McNally on the map, we're ideally suited to serve all of your clients in our targeted areas. You can still serve all your clients in Southern California with a one-day turnaround, strategically located. But if you don't have sites with infrastructure, you don't have buildings for people to come in that are built to modern standards to lease, it's easy to lose the site selection process. So I know in District 1, and this board voted to evenly divide those funds 5 ways. I'm going to be pushing really all of District 1's to infrastructure, water, broadband, to make us stronger.
So I'm going to add a few thoughts to what you heard from both supervisors. And let me start with we staff, when we work with the board, recognize 2 primary differences. One is reoccurring revenues, such as property tax and sales tax, if the board was to adopt it, because those are every year. And we have the sheriff and the law enforcement and the attorneys and the courts and the employees every single year. They're here. We budget for those reoccurring expenses, and we need reoccurring revenues for those. So the major distinction between the two is reoccurring revenue and expenses and one-time revenue. This American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA as is also known, the $41 million that you mentioned, is a one-time. So it's not recurring, and it comes with very specific strings attached. What you can use it for and what you can't. So it's effective as of March 3rd of this year, 2021, and it's good to cover COVID-related expenses until December of 2024. That is in the future. We don't know what the future holds. We're doing a lot to educate ourselves. I would also share with you that the federal government has issued what they call an interim rule, but they have not issued the final rule yet. So we have not spent a single dollar. We have not received all the money either. We've received half of it. The other half will come in a year from now. So we're proceeding very cautiously, and as you heard from both supervisors, there are strings attached, and there are priorities in each district. And infrastructure, I'm sure, is going to be key and will be high. The last thing we want to do is rush into it, spend those dollars, only to find out that they're not eligible expenses. And they've made it clear that we will have to report, we will be audited, and if they're not eligible, we get to pay them back. So they're really two separate ones. I trust that the board will use them wisely and will use them for long-lasting projects and benefits, but they're not going to go for, they're not designed to address the priorities. In fact, they specifically mention that those dollars are not supposed to go to financial services and paying down pensions and so on. Carl?
So I would just add just a couple of things. The first round of the Arizona CARES money that came from the federal government, Mojave County, like all other counties that were in the rural areas, if accepted, were required to spend that solely on public safety and public health compensation, which we did. Then that freed up some monies to be available for other purposes. And I didn't bring the list with exactly what that was, but I have most of it here in my mind. But one of the things that the supervisors did last year with the money it freed up out of the general fund was return $1 million in property taxes to you. So they reduced the property tax rate from about $1.94, $1.95 down to $1.90 for this fiscal year. And it was just over $1 million. It was about $1.1 million, $1.2 million in exchange. So that's one thing that happened with the money freed up, was your property tax rate was reduced. Then the board allocated monies from that to purchase and operate the body cameras for the sheriff's office. And then it also paid for, I'm thinking, where were they? They were in the county attorney's office, but they needed to hire and train redaction experts, because apparently when you get body cameras going, they also record things that should not be part of the public purview. Before these tapes go to court, they have to be reviewed by staff and qualified staff. So we had to use money for that. We beefed up the contingency up to about $8.8 million. So we used, it was just over $4 million that was remaining, that we moved the contingency up. So we have a budget of about $105 million, but let's say it's $100 million to round it off. And we have about, well, we have an exact $8.8 million contingency fund, so it's 8 to 9%. A contingency fund of 10% is very reasonable and normal. So we do have that now up to that level. And then the board also moved over $2.5 million for capital project, one-time projects. So the only monies that were really utilized in relationship to what Sam mentioned about one time, the only monies that were utilized out of all of that for recurring, where we ended up making a decision that we have to repeat in future years, was we took a reduction in property tax revenue of over $1 million that will be ongoing unless the board decided to increase the property tax rate back up. And then it was about $200,000 there in that range for the employees that were hired in the county attorney's office to do the redaction. Otherwise, they were just one time.
And Sam, if I could just address the $5 million that we did not accept of the rental assistance for people that suffer because of the COVID. I just want to remind everyone that we have also in place a state program that helps anyone. You don't have to be affected by the COVID-19, but if you're a victim of domestic violence or just fall on hard times or you're indigent for whatever reason, there's a state program that can help people with giving housing vouchers and stuff. So we didn't turn our back on the needy in Mojave County. We turned our back on the federal government, giving us another $5 million when we couldn't even spend the first $5 million that they gave us. So I just wanted to clarify that.
If no other questions, then we really appreciate you all coming out tonight. As you heard from both supervisors, your evenings are your evenings, and I'm sure you would like to probably be doing something else. You took the time to join us. We really appreciate your input. That's what the supervisors wanted when they asked us to set up this town hall. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your input. We look forward to hearing from you in the near and far future, and have a nice evening.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.